Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Tom Rivera, and welcome to our project, The Oral History of South Colton. And today we're at 859 Allen Street, the home of Mr. and Mrs. Mel Salazar. And Lucy, Mel, thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
letting us use your house this afternoon. And today is Sunday, January the 11th, and it's approximately 2:30 in the afternoon. But again, thank you for letting us use your house. And Mel, you're so generous because of some of the episodes that you've gone through recently.
Yeah.
And you're able to be with us this afternoon. So thank you very much. Mel, the last time we got together was January the 7th.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, we interviewed at Cal State San Bernardino.
Right.
And we talked about your mom, and your mom being one of the original softball players in this area in the Inland Empire,
Yes.
specifically
The
Colton.
senoritas, yeah. The
And
Mercury
what-
senoritas.
What was the name of what was the name?
Mercury senoritas.
And what year was that, Mel?
They started playing in 38, 39. And when my mom got married, she got playing ball again because my dad passed away in 45. So she continued playing for the San Bernardino team, which was girls from different leagues, different cities, were the Cherokees. And she played about 3 years with them. And then by that time, she already had my brother and myself were already born.
And then your first project was to make notice and note in history
Right.
that your mom was very involved in the development of softball in the
Right.
area, and you started a project for her to nominate her into the Hall of Fame in Colton.
Her and the whole team.
And what was the result of your efforts to do that?
Well, I got her in. They voted her in. It was unanimous. There was about 6 commissioners, park commissioners that select them. And there was about 6 entries. But last year, when my mom, they allowed 4 winners. So that was great. But her team got a unanimous vote. So I was happy about that. Happy and proud for my
And
mom.
where is the recognition placed in Colton?
Well, last year it was at the council chambers, but this year with my other project that I just finished, they had it there at Gonzalez Center.
And that's in Colton.
That's both in Colton.
Both
yeah.
in Colton.
Yeah.
And when we talked last time, you mentioned that you were getting ready to do a different project.
Yeah.
And that project was to look at history, Colton history, and identify some of the old-time
Old times, yeah.
Latino baseball players
Right.
from the area.
Right.
What did you find out?
Well,
Well, before we do that, Mel, let me go back. I should have mentioned this before, but why is this project important to you?
it's important because I have found out that, including my mom's team and the team that I'm working they got nominated this year, and next year, a lot of people never heard of my mom's team. I mean, the people that are 90 years old or they're late 80s, they heard about them. But the ones I'm working here, a lot of them didn't because their sons and daughters are in their 90s of this team that I just got in. So people didn't even know they played ball. So I just wanted, it's important to me and to Colton that these families know what their dads and their brothers did. And that's what and I just, the biggest motivation that they know and they don't forget. So when these people die, when my mom passes, when I pass, my kids and my grandkids can go to the city hall or Gonzalez Center and see, oh, look who's there. I didn't know they played ball.
Or I'm related to them in some way
Exactly.
or another.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So you try to preserve
Exactly.
that piece of history
That's my
that has
motivation.
been missing all these years
All these
in the
years.
history books of Colton.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
Exactly.
Now tell me, what did you find out in this new research that you're doing on the old timers and their contribution to baseball in Colton?
Go ahead and, did you want me to go ahead and read this right now, or?
Would you like to read it?
Yeah, I'd like to read it. It maybe 3-4 minutes, something like that.
Okay.
But it will explain and give you a lot of answers to questions.
And you presented this
This is the
report.
same, this is what I read. And I think this is a big part when you're presenting. For any of the teams or Ken Hubbs or Camilo, you have to have a good presentation. And give them a lot of answers and information, because I worked hard. I went to the library and the microfilm, my eyes were bulging out of my head by the time I got, but I did it in a year's time, so I was able to do that, and I got a lot of information. But let me start with the late great Central's Cubs baseball team. We here in Colton don't realize how much baseball history we have and have had in the past. Well, I'm here to let you know and open your eyes and hearts to the history you don't know about this team. In about 7 or 8 years, it will be 100 years that this team, the Central's Cubs, were all young men who ate, slept, lived baseball. The earliest I have found through microfilm that they were playing was in late 1921-22. 7 more years. That's 100 years. And they were already playing ball. They were formed and put together by the late Juan Caldera. Mr. Caldera not only formed the team, but also built a baseball field for the team, which was Cubs Park, they called it. They called it well, I'll have the information right here, but it was like in 1924. It was located on the corner of Rancho and Congress in South Colton. But across the street was Awamansa, so same street, just that's what the cutoff name was. Mr. Calera also built a swimming pool for the public, about a block away from the baseball field on 5th Street. He was an entrepreneur in the early 20s. He and his brother Aristeo were the first manager and assistant manager of the team when it first got started. The park was named Cubs Park, but was also known as El Corralón, which meant the corral, which I didn't know because my Spanish isn't that great, but
We understand. We
Yeah.
understand. Go ahead.
because a lot of people didn't know what was a corralón, I didn't know, but now we know. On this team, in the early years of the 20s to early years of the 30s, there were 4 brothers who were all outstanding players who played together for many years. Their names were from the oldest to the youngest: Porfirio, Arturo, Pio, and Sal Casurena. These 4 were the bulk of the team. They even played with other teams in the area when they weren't playing with their main Cubs team. They played with teams all over Southern California, parts of Mexico like Mexicali. I have also, through my research, found the team played with or against the late greats Gordon Malzberger, who's in the Hall of Fame, George Castor. These are ex-major
And
league.
these are also Colton boys. Yeah.
Colton, these are all Colton boys.
Uh-huh.
Who's in the Hall. Future major leaguers, Lefty Faulkner, James. I had read about him, and then I read in the thing where he was an ex-major league. So you're talking about 3 major league ball players that either played against or for these teams with the Cubs. This shows you how good these players were. Some of them could have been major leaguers if they were allowed, but we all know how things were done during those days. And I'm including the Negro leagues, what they did to them, and how many would have made the majors, but they already got too old. A few of them made it, like Satchel Paige, and Jackie Robinson was a young guy, but there was Josh Gibson, who was the best. He hit more home runs than Babe Ruth did. The other team members who were just as good were a young man whose name was Milton Noriega. Milton.
The
He was a
owner of the
pitcher.
Sombrero Cafe. Yeah.
The owner. He built it. And it was a Sombrero Cafe and Dance Hall back in the early 30s. Another great player was Tilo Duarte, not Teo. Teo was his son.
Before you leave Milton,
Yeah.
What was his position?
That I would have to look. I have
No,
it.
that's
here.
okay.
I have it here. He was Milton was a pitcher. I just mentioned that.
Okay.
Another great player was Tilo Duarte, who played many years with the team. His son Teo Duarte went on and played with the original Colton Mercury baseball team. They played for so many years. Other players were Ambrosio Gonzalez and his brother Joe Gonzalez, who I found kind of late in my looking at finding teams. And
Going back to Teo Duarte,
Okay.
didn't he marry Porfirio Castorena's daughter,
exactly,
Carolina?
exactly. That was so. Here are two fathers who one had a son, one had a daughter, and they got married.
Mm-hmm.
And Theo became, he was a great player.
He was a third baseman,
I think so.
right?
And through that marriage, he's got a grandson who was signed by the Giants, and I'll have his name here later on somewhere in the thing. But he was signed, but he messed up. He was a pitcher, but messed up his arm, and that was it. But he played for about 6 years. Didn't make the majors.
What was his name?
Um,
Did it come?
it'll be here. Or David Kinowski. That was a tongue twister for me.
Yeah, I get you.
But yeah, but a lot of this,
Go ahead then.
so like I say, that bloodline just went on,
Yeah.
from the Casuenas and Duarte, and then the Duarte to his grandson.
Hmm. So I would imagine that baseball was not only a sport, but also it was a way for people to get together,
Exactly.
socialize, party, and then be able to meet, sons and daughters of the players.
Fellowshipping,
Okay.
and that's great. That's part of life.
Hmm. Go ahead.
Of course, there was Ambrosio Gonzalez and his brother Joe Gonzalez. I still haven't found any of their family. I have my cousin, who was Carolyn Lujan, married Tony Gonzalez, who's related to them, and he's going to give me some information as if there's any family besides himself. But if we couldn't find any, I had for him to show up at the induction. There was also Andres Negrete, who I haven't got a lot of information about him. And I know there's a lot of Negretes in Colton, but that's going to be, that's my project now, to find the families. So they'll be there during the induction. There was Juan Hernandez. That was Luis Hernandez's
Louis Hernandez's father.
dad, yeah.
Also related to Henry, who's across the table from us.
Mm-hmm. And also, of course, he had his son Louis and Pete. Pete Hernandez.
Right.
Yeah, he lives here on Citrus. So, and I already talked to them. And he worked. Juan Hernandez worked for the city for a long time. I'm not sure if he always there or if he worked someplace else before. There was also Cayetano Calderia, whose son Chon Calderia played on the 1954 Little League World Series team
In Williamsport.
at Williamsport with Ken Hubbs and all those guys.
Mm-hmm.
So and they're in the hall also.
The Little League team that went to Williamsport is also in the Hall of
yeah.
Fame. Okay.
And the 56 team, the one that went a year after that, or the year they skipped a year, they went to Williamsport.
And who were there any Latinos on that team?
Chon
Besides
Cal-
Chon, and who else?
There was I think there was another one, but I can't recall his
Danny.
name. Oh yeah, Danny Carrasco. How
Danny
could I forget
Carrasco,
him?
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Danny. Those are the only two that I know. 'Cause Danny graduated a year after me, and Chon graduated in 1960 with me.
Okay.
So, but I think there was another one, but I couldn't, because he moved out of town at an early age, and I didn't know him. And I think that's what put Colton on a map. Of course, they got national coverage, There was Manuel Gaitan, who also played for the Central Cub team. And I think his son, Manuel, Sandy, went to school with you.
He graduated with me
Yeah,
from high school.
exactly.
And tell me about Manuel Gaitan. I had no idea that he was a ball player.
Well, Manuel, Sandy, his son, was always telling, my dad played for this and that. He was signed by the Giants, never got to play, but he kept telling me about him. And I said, well, come and see the pictures I have. I always invited him, but he never But during that book that Cal State made, they have a picture of him. So I did my homework, and he did play with the
He was
Centrals.
recruited for
The New York Giants. The New York Giants. because,
and
you
why
know,
didn't he decide to
Well,
not to go to the to the major
the story with him is that he was engaged. He was going to get married, and I guess he had to choose between the two, and Mama won.
They do it all the time.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But I will never know what would have happened.
Yeah.
But just to get recruited or you know is a great thing
And
anyway.
what year was that Mel got recruited?
I think that was in probably in the 30s.
In the
sometime.
30s?
Yeah.
In the
Yeah,
30s.
He was still young.
That's a wonderful surprise. I had no idea.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a wonderful surprise. And then their story, their
Yeah,
little
Sandy
Romeo
would-
and Juliet story.
Yeah, yeah.
Very
Sandy
nice.
would know that.
Yeah.
His son. The other team members who were just as good were a young man whose name was, oh, well, I already did that, the Milton Noriega. Taya Duarte, Mango Gaitan. But decided not, this is Mango Gaitan, he decided not to join and stayed in Colton to marry his future wife. There was another player I found whose name was Juan Rivas. And he had a little store. Do you remember the bridge that crossed over to go to Wilson or Garfield?
Yes. Yes.
Right at the bottom, on the not on the Wilson side, but on this side, there was
Right.
a little store. And we in the mornings we'd go, Rivas, we'd wake him up.
On
because
the
we-
corner of 7th and Maple?
Yes,
Yes, okay.
Juan Rivas.
Uh-huh.
Now it's funny because his daughter Mary Rivas was on my mom's team. Okay, so
So the tradition has continued.
it's in the blood.
Yeah.
It's in the blood. Whose name was Juan Rivas, and he also had a brother. I never found out his first name. It was E. Rivas, something. And it was a brother that also played. As it turns out, Juan was the father of Mary Rivas, who played on the same team my mom played with the Mercury Senoritas, who were just inducted last year. As a footnote, I want to say that Porfirio's daughter, which I think we already ran over, married Tilo Duarte's son. And boy, like I say, boy, what a bloodline that was. Teo's grandson, David Kinowaski, signed with the San Francisco Giants and played 8 years in the minors. He was later injured and could no longer play ball. Hopefully I have given you all in this panel enough history of the team that should not be forgotten. They played in the early history of the game of baseball. They were as good or maybe even better than the great Gordon Maltzberger or George Castor, who played many, many years in the majors than they did. James Lefty Faulkner was another one who played in the majors that played with the Central's Cubs team. He was a pitcher. And they were all from Colton. The Cubs contributed so much to the sport they loved. The people who saw them play were very lucky. They will never make the Baseball Hall of Fame. I'm talking about the Major League Hall of Fame. But only you can put them in the Colton Hall of Fame. Let us not forget. These young men did not play for money, but for the love of the game. Thank you. That was my presentation, and
But
they
how
were
about an
selected.
applause?
They were selected unanimously, and I was proud of that because there was only 2 picked this year, and they were one of the 2.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So I'm 2 for 2 right now. So, and my next project will probably be getting the Colton Mercuries next year, and hopefully they'll get in. I'm sure they will. I've done my homework, and if they don't, the thing about the Hall of Fame, if you don't make it this year, you can try again.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But my mom, I guess we were lucky that they chose 4, but this year was just 2.
Uh-huh.
So it kind of narrows that down to where it's a lot harder to make it.
Yeah. Let me go back to some
Sure.
of the players that you mentioned in your report,
Sure.
and also that you found out in your research.
Right.
The Castorena brothers, you had 3 Castorena brothers?
4.
4 Castorena? There was Porfirio?
Porfirio, Arturo, Pio, and Sal.
Okay. Now, Bill, where did they work? Do you know where they work?
I've just found out because they played on some teams for the cement plant, so I'm
Uh-huh.
thinking that's probably where the Sal and Arturo played. Pio, I never found out where he worked,
Uh-huh.
uh, or Porfirio. I would have to ask Tommy Casurena,
Okay. Okay.
but most likely could have been the PFE or the cement plant.
Well, I guess possibly the cement plant because
Yeah.
Sal lived close to the cement plant,
Mhm.
and I think Porfirio would bicycle himself to the cement plant. He was our neighbor. But when did they have time to play ball, or was it just a big determination that they were going to play?
Well, these guys played not just for a couple of teams. They were playing all over. They played, like I say, with the cement plant. They played for a couple of them played for Pio and Sal played for a team that from Santa Fe. I have a couple of pictures of them on that, and so did Tio Duarte. Yeah, Tilo Duarte played on one of those teams from Santa Fe. So, like I say, as I told you before, that these guys didn't just play once a week or twice. They played as many days as they could after work or whatever, or between seasons from the Cubs. They would go to Mexicali, played against Mexicali, and I've got a picture here where I think it's Sal who had a Mexicali uniform. So they also played with the teams over there. They also played Japanese and Chinese teams back in the 20s and 30s. Because a lot of your Japanese and Chinese would come over here and play against teams over here.
That's the other question I'm going to ask you. Who do they play? You mentioned teams from all over the place, and by all over the place you mean Riverside, San Bernardino.
Yeah, they had a lot of. Yeah, there was teams, and even Cervantes, I think, had a team. Of course, that might be with. But they did have a lot of teams, Anglo teams that they played against, and sometimes they would have an Anglo play with them, but there was teams from L.A. and probably San Bernardino that they played against, because I imagine that there was probably a lot of teams during that time.
Well, I would imagine that were they ever able to play in North Colton against the Anglo teams, or did they just play against the Mexican teams from the different communities?
I think it was mainly the Mexican, because they weren't allowed to play in some of these Anglo teams because they were
Or
Mexicans.
they couldn't play in North
Yeah,
Colton?
and if the Anglos didn't want to play with them, or they probably didn't want to play against them,
Uh-huh.
So, but that happened in the Negro leagues too,
Mhm.
So,
The other question that I had, which out of curiosity, is did they all go to Colton High School?
the only ones I
Because
found,
I know that
Yeah.
Malzberger was a big star at
Oh,
the
yeah.
Colton High School. But what about our Mexican American players? Did they attend Colton High School?
the only ones I know for sure were Pio, Casorena, and Sal, and I have pictures of them sitting next to who's the principal for Colton?
McIntosh?
McIntosh. McIntosh was their coach, and you got to see him in the pictures. He's a young McIntosh, unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Because Sal would have graduated in '29. I think Pio graduated a year or two before that. But I have pictures of them. As far as the older Casarenas, they might have only gone to sixth grade or eighth grade, like a lot of people did. They, with big families, they had to work
Uh-huh.
and help with the family, and that happened a lot during that time. Tilo Duarte, I would have to find out, where he worked and all that.
So mainly you would assume that it was the Portland Cement Plant
Yeah,
or the PFE.
or they could have just been construction workers, because they were a lot of
about-
skilled laborers.
I would imagine that in reading some articles of some of the players from Orange County, many of them were orange pickers.
Sure.
And we had a
Well,
lot
a
of
lot of them were
sippers
here
here.
too. Yeah.
We had a lot of
I remember as a
sippers here.
kid, the truck would honk, and they'd early in the morning pick them up and take them, and then come back later in the day. Yeah, and that's their main job.
Uh-huh.
I remember hearing where if you were a, how do you call it, cenicero, one that could pick 100 boxes a day.
Cienero.
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 Cieneros.
Somebody could pick 100 bucks a
Oh,
day.
and a lot of them were the old guys,
Uh-huh.
the ones that had done it for years and years.
And I would imagine some of these players were some of those cieneros that we're talking about.
Exactly, exactly. You know, especially if they didn't work at the cement plant or other places.
Mhm.
But yeah,
And Mel, did they have any sponsors? You know, because
the only sponsors were the Calderas, because he was the entrepreneur. He's the backer. You know, he had the money. Now with the cement, when some of them played with the cement plant, well, there was a cement plant or Santa Fe. There was Santa Fe that were their sponsors.
The
No.
Santa Fe Railroad?
Yes. Hmm.
Now the cement plant, did they have a ball field? Did
I
they have a
heard they-
ball field at the bottom of the
I heard they did on Rancho.
right?
Yeah, I never saw it, or I just heard about it,
Mhm.
but they had their own ball field. So
Is that a bee?
Something's buzzing.
yeah, it's a bee
Where is it?
right there in the window.
That's a yellow jacket,
Yeah.
a ball player.
Yeah, yeah, he's our
Wants to get into
mascot.
the act. Wants to get into
Yeah,
the act.
yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, what about I would imagine after work and playing and then just having what they do at home. And they
How they found time.
did they have large families?
Most of them did. In fact, I have a picture in one of the Colton books that you know Bobby Vasquez that made here several
Yes.
years ago,
Yes.
of an old band, and 3 or 4 of the Casuena brothers played in the band too.
They were also
Músicos, yeah.
músicos.
Yeah, yeah.
They played in the band.
Exactly, yeah. So, what can I say? They kept busy.
They did
How did
everything.
they find? Exactly, exactly. You see, this is things people didn't know about them. So hopefully, with what I'm doing here, is they'll know
Mhm.
and not forget. Because you know, how can you go through life? I know their families will never forget, but we shouldn't forget. We should remember what they did. You know, that's my motivation. Not only for my mom's team or this team, because the Mercuries that I'm going to be working on next, all those people are 90 or over. These were the sons of the original team.
Tell me about your next project.
Well, my next project's going to probably be, and I was going to do it this year, but I said, no, I'll wait till next year to nominate the Colton Mercury men's team. And they started in 39 and played for 3-4 years before the war started. And then they continued again back in 46, I think it was.
After the war.
After the war. And they continued playing. Of course, a lot of them got too old, but that continued to probably into the 70s or maybe early 80s. You know, the Mercury team, who had a lot of ball players. But what I'm going for this project is the originals, the ones that were
The original were the 40s through
30s through the 40s and maybe up to the 50s, but mainly the 40s. Because a lot of them continue to play. There was Ray Martinez, Ralph Martinez. There was a whole oodles of them. There was a bunch of them. And most people now that are alive today remember them because there were some are still, like I remember them, are still young enough to remember, but a lot of them don't even know about the Cubs or the Centrals.
I didn't know anything about them, but my
Yeah.
heroes were the Mercuries.
Yeah.
You know,
And they're all,
Ralph Martinez was a catcher.
sure.
And
And his brother was Simon was a pitcher.
pitcher. And first baseman was Art Miguel.
Yeah.
Second baseman was, I don't know,
Yeah, I
second
can't-
baseman,
Yeah.
Mejia.
Oh yeah, they got the
Yeah.
two pitchers from Highgrove. I forget their names right offhand, but I have their names. I
The
have
third baseman was Theo Duarte.
Yeah, yeah. They had a good team.
They had a great team.
And I
Yeah.
found out too that there was a junior Mercury team. I never knew that in the early years. And then after they broke up, some of them became the big team. But I got a lot of information. I got a lot of names and positions. So when I make my presentation next year, it'll all be there. So,
What role did the
teams have in the community? Were they celebrated? Were they role models? Were they entertainment for the community? Did they fundraise in the community?
Yeah. A lot of that I don't know, but I'm thinking, because you can go to any city in Orange County or Cucamonga, every Sunday after church, there was a game to be played. Played for nothing, maybe a keg of beer or whatever, but even the Mercury's did that, you know. But they played for fun, you know, and people looked up to them because that was their entertainment. There was no TV. You know, if you wanted something on radio, you couldn't even see a major league ball player. You could hear about it in radio, but that was it. That was their. They loved baseball then. The people loved. I mean, they sometimes even at night, if it was getting dark, they'd park their cars and turn on their lights, and you know, that's what I heard. But I think it was just a big thing, and that's what the community loved about them. Even though maybe a lot of them weren't related to the players, but where are you going to go? There was no Little League. There was no Pony League. There was no Colt League. There was no Girls League or soccer or anything like that.
And then we were regulated to stay in South Colton.
Yeah, yeah. That's sad. I have my own feelings about my country, and it's my country, and I love my country. But we did a lot of, and when I say we, I'm saying overall, we did a lot of bad. From the British coming to us taking over the American Indian, putting the Japanese Americans into concentration camps. They didn't do it to the German Americans or the Italian Americans who were fighting. I've heard stories because they used to have a lot of Italian POWs here, and they take them to town and feed them in restaurants. But you do that to a black guy that just came from the service and lost an arm or lost a leg. They weren't allowed.
Mm-hmm.
That is a tragedy, you know. And the blacks, what can you say about them? They were slaves. They were slaves. And to this day, they still have a lot of problems. And I know they have a lot of, even to this day, a lot of you're hurt. They can't use it as an excuse, but it is true. What was done to them was done to them. But a lot of Mexicanos, there was a lot done to them in Texas and in here. And look at all the great men. John F. Kennedy, shot and killed. Robert Kennedy, shot and killed. Martin Luther King, shot and killed. And they were all peaceful men. Chavez, he wasn't killed, but he went through that fasting, almost died, because he believed what he was doing. He believed, and I look at them now, I think they're better off now than they were before. Mm-hmm. But it didn't have to be that way, but because of, you know, I get emotional when I think about it.
Do. But you know, that's the way it was, and that's you know, through de facto segregation, and that's the way it was. And nobody was able to. They complained about it, but you couldn't do anything about it because that's the way it was.
You could,
and you have to accept that for what it was.
Yeah.
Back then,
right.
And I think our baseball players, growing up and being acculturated into the system, were able to look at what was available.
Yeah.
And get together, form teams.
Yeah. If I can't play on that team, we'll make our own team. That's
right.
They
would. They would kind of answer to the call of being self-sufficient.
Exactly.
Where they would have to do what they had to do
and still
with the
work,
resources
and still work every day
that were available to them, right. And still be able to participate in society, either as an athlete or as a worker in one of the occupations that was available
right.
to them.
Right.
Yeah. But let me get back, Mel. You know, in baseball, you have to have equipment. You have to have uniforms.
Right.
You have to have a field. And how were they able to get those resources to be able to participate in their sport?
Well, that's where their sponsors come in. That's where, and I'm sure Juan Caldera had some money because he's the one that would probably buy everything, built the field and buy the balls and the bats and even if he had to buy the shoes, but he was their main source.
Uh-huh.
And I'm sure during those games they would have sell beer or sell whatever, so he may get some of that money back.
Hmm. So through concession stands,
Yeah.
they probably have made some money
Oh, I
to be
think
able to
so.
support
Yeah,
their
but he
their
was making
activities.
money in the. He also had a bull ring. He had a cantina there, plus the plant. So money was coming in for him.
Yeah.
So he had
It's
the
also
money to
my
pay for that.
understanding that he, in downtown, on 7th Street, he had a carniceria.
Hmm.
He had a store there, and was able to maintain that store, and then from there was able to do the project on South Fifth Street.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He had a lot of land there. Evidently, he must have owned from Fifth Street to Rancho, all that area right there, because that's where
What about the other stores on 7th Street, Mel? Like the bakery, the
Martinez Bakery.
uh-huh.
Yeah, and that was. I know one of the sons of the owners. They called him Baker Martinez,
Right,
and he had a brother named Nick Martinez who
Right.
played in a band.
the band.
But Baker was a great ball player. He went to Colton High back in the 30s, and he's still alive. He's 95, 96 years old. He lives up in Sacramento, because I know his nephew Nick Martinez Jr. and he's the one that fills me in sometimes that he doesn't come over here anymore. He can't drive. But those are the only. I remember there was a lot of stores there, Tucker's and Martinez, and I lived off near Fifth Street where they had Bocanegra's Market. They had Cervantes Market on La Cadena.
What about
Navarro's.
the market? Yeah, Navarro, and then west of Navarro on O Street.
Esperanza.
La Esperanza, right?
Oh, that
La
was, yeah.
Esperanza.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
yeah. Yeah, he had that store for a long time.
So no knowledge where they contributed to the sponsorship
No.
of the team.
No. 'Cause
So
that-
they did it. They just did it because they wanted to do it. Then.
one way or another.
Right.
They played probably with no uniforms if they had to,
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's, I can remember back then, kids would go barefoot to school.
And I was going to ask you, when did they play their games? Would they play them on Saturday, Sunday?
Saturday, Sunday, and I
What
think-
about at night or the daytime? I
No,
would
there was
imagine
no night ball. I know later on, South Colton Park, when the Mercury's played, they brought in lights, but that was way after.
uh-huh.
So it was probably all day, after church, But they played other places, other fields, but I don't think they had lights then. Look, even the major leagues didn't have lights.
Hmm.
And I think the first one were the Cubs, I think, way back when. But that's it. So they struggled, but they played ball.
Mel, looking at the set of questions that I have about baseball, did I miss anything?
Um,
No, I think I did a good job with
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, I think I did an excellent job. Now tell me about you, Mel. You're a graduate of Colton High School.
yeah, I graduated in '60.
And while you were at Colton High School, you were a star athlete. What was your sport?
Well, I ran cross country and track for 2 years because I had lived in San Leandro up north for 2 years, my freshman sophomore year, and then came back to Colton. And I got started with track over there my sophomore year. So when I came here, Gabe Casona Jr. was Mr. Big
In cross country.
in cross country. I mean, he was beating everybody. So the first coach I had said, "Well, Mel, what do you want to go for JV or varsity?" I'm a junior already. What do I want to go for JV? So I want to go for varsity. They had the tryouts, and I took second. I was still behind Gabe. So mainly, he was the guy that I could never beat. My coach used to tell me, just keep trying, try and catch up with him. That's what I did. When I went to CIF my junior year, I think I came in 19th, but he came in 25th. So I beat him, which was a more important meet. And in track, that was my mile. I was a miler. My first year Had never run that before. I took third in CBL. And Gabe didn't, he dropped out of the track field because, and I don't want to judge or say anything, but some people, if you're not number one, you give up. But he's the one that kept me going and getting me stronger, like my coach said. So the next year, cross country, well, that year he took second and I took a third in cross country. My last year, cross country again, he took a first, I took a second. I took a 10th in CIF and he took a 19th.
Huh.
But if I would have done that reverse, I would have gotten the gold medal in
And
CBL.
when did you graduate from Colton High School?
1960.
1960?
Yeah. So going into my track season, I just won about everything I could. I did. I broke the school record, which was 15 years old. John Cherry, who was a CIFer, he went to state at one time. I think his record was 431. I did it at 426.5.
Wow.
So I was happy with that. And then we went to the preliminaries the next week. I took a first. Went to the semifinals next week. I took a first. But going to the finals, I was running against the big boys, the guys that were running 420, 423. And I'll always remember my last race. I took a fifth. And they only gave 5 medals. They didn't give. They didn't have small schools, medium schools, and then the big schools. And no, I was running against guys from San Diego, all over. It was Southern California. So there was a sophomore sensation who wound up winning, and I think he was a 420 miler. And the guy that came in second was from Torrance. He was right behind him. The third guy was a Mexicano, Guruli. It's a Mexicano name, but we used to call him Gurel, but it's
Yeah.
Guruli.
Gurule.
And I remember in cross country, this guy was one of the best guys, and he was winning all the time. Well, coming, because you go 4 times in the mile, going into the last turn, he was third place at that point, and I was passing him. And I could hear him saying, and which I should have done in retrospect, he was, oh God, no God, oh God, no God. You know who won it for him? Well, he didn't take second, he took third. And as soon as he did, because I never had a kick. In my strategy when I ran it all, gave it 100%. If I have a kick, that means I didn't do my full race. I had too much energy. So I gave it all in my race, in all my races. Well, I said, at least I got 4th. I still have a medal. When I said that in my mind, a guy from Miracosta passed me, Murphy. And I remember all these guys because across country you get to know them. And these guys were great runners. I mean, they did a lot better in cross country than I did. I said, here, I'm running against these guys. So I said, I got 5th. Then I prayed, dear Lord, don't let anybody pass me anymore, because then I would have lost out. I took a 5th. And
And then, you came in 5th, and you graduated from Colton High School. Now, tell me about the story that your mom told you about being a barber.
oh, well, that happened, and this was before because we got married young. I was 18, she was 15. And
Now, she is Lucy.
Lucy Chavez, yeah. And she's related to the Carrion family here in Colton, who
Baseball.
baseballers, yeah, Camilo. And Camilo's son also played Major League Ball.
And Porfirio.
And Porfirio, but I'm talking about Major League. Yeah, Porfirio played ball too. Neto, I don't know. I don't know too much about if he played ball or not, because there was another brother, Neto, Ernie.
So your mom said,
Well, that was during when we had to get married. And back then, it seems like kids now, they get pregnant and the guy just takes off and makes 5 more someplace else.
but your mom was more responsible and said,
And I was responsible too. I knew what I had to do, even at 18. And, well, Mijo, why don't you try, because I had an uncle that was at Barber College. Why don't you try barbering? So she's the one that said it. And because my dad died during the war, they paid for my schooling. So that was a blessing. and I was able to raise my 4 daughters and buy this house with a lot of the money that my mom saved that she didn't have to save.
When did you start your barber shop?
Well, I started there. It wasn't mine at the beginning. It was Charlie's Barbershop. And he used to do everybody there. Ken Hubbs and Mayor Mel Fuchs and a lot of important people. I started with it in 62. And in 74, he sold it. He retired. And from there on till 2012,
He sold it to you.
he sold it to me.
Uh-huh.
Bring in my mom again. I didn't have the $1,500 to buy the shop. My mom, she loaned me it, and I paid her back in a year.
So you had the barber shop for how many years now?
Well, from the time I started there to 2012, I was there 50 years. Maybe I didn't own it for 50 years, but I was there
Uh-huh.
50 years. How many people stay at their job for 50 years?
And then you retired when, Mel?
At the end of 2012, I found out I had two blocked arteries. They couldn't work them. No stents, no open heart surgery. So I said to myself, this is a wake-up call. I says, in retrospect, I said, this is my call. And I look back now, because I'm into the church right now. I'm not a Catholic anymore, but I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ, as we all do. That I told people later on, I think that was my call. God says, like with Peter, leave. Just leave your boat. That was my boat. So I left. And he said, I'll take care of you. Now I'm going through a lot of stuff now. I got through my, I'm doing okay with my plugged arteries. Then later I found out I had cancer in my stomach. Got rid of that. Then they found some spots in my lungs. I went to get a CAT scan and they say the thing shrunk. And it was too small to give it a biopsy. So they said, well, tomorrow I'm going for another CAT scan to see if hopefully it's gone. And, or if not, I do what I got to do. Like I tell people now, because I've lost about 45, 50 pounds.
I know because when I
just,
saw you a year ago.
Yeah, people say, oh, Mel, you're looking good. This is probably the weight I should be, but my arms are flabby and, I got more skin and
Yeah, that's la bola.
the bola.
That's la bola.
That we can't get away from.
No.
But like I tell people, especially at church, I tell them, you know what, I'm living here and I'm not eating like I should. And I'm losing a lot of weight. But I'm getting fat with Jesus Christ. With the Word.
Uh-huh.
And they understand. Because we're supposed to take the Word from Jesus Christ, but we're also supposed to give it back. Maybe the old saying, it's better to give than receive. Well, no, it's better to receive from Jesus Christ and then you give back.
And then
That's my philosophy.
And then you mentioned your family. How many
Yeah.
daughters did you have?
I've got 4 daughters.
Uh-huh.
I got 50, 51, 49, and 47. I said in 3 more years, all my daughters will be 50 and over.
Uh-huh. Grandkids?
I got 10 grandkids,
Uh-huh.
and we've got 10 great grandkids.
You're kidding.
We just had our 10th one.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's wonderful, Lucy.
Yeah.
And I tell everybody,
Congratulations.
I don't have money in the bank. I've never made a lot of money, but God got me through this. And my riquezas are my kids.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And your wonderful contribution not only to your family, but also to the community, Mel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mel, the other thing is we've gone through, it's almost an hour that we started our interview today. Are there any things that I missed, Mel, or any stories that you would like to share with us that we didn't mention in our interview today?
As far as
maybe I could ask you, what was the best thing that you got out of doing your research on the old timers in Colton?
I didn't know any of these. Maybe Sal I might have met years and years ago, but I just remembered him when he was bald, kind of. I'm not gonna say fat, but he was a big guy.
Gordito.
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 Yeah. But after doing this, I know them. I know them. And I'm just so proud that I could get them in. Proud for their families. And there's probably a lot of families that don't even know what I've done. That's why a lot of the families of Ambrosio Gonzalez and Joe Gonzalez, I'm going to have to find out through more research so I can get them to be there at the induction in April. So that's a done deal. They made it. So, and probably a lot of their family don't know that their great-grandparents played ball. And that's my satisfaction. That's why it's important to me. And I think it's important to the community. Everybody in South Colton. That they know that they've got a lot of history there. A lot of history, a lot of baseball history. More so than football or basketball. It's baseball. Those are the roots of, and not just here, San Bernardino. There was hundreds of teams in Santana and Cucamonga and where's your dad from? Cucamonga, yeah, Cuca. But there was so many, and they've had the same thing as we did. She's got a comadre that lives in Kansas, and every year they have a get together with all the old time ball players, Latino ball players. They have a fiesta, and they come from all over, and they have like a tournament. So it wasn't just here; it's all over. I imagine Texas must have had oodles of, yeah. Because you know the Carrasco, not the Carrascos, but
Yeah, the Carrascos are from Texas.
yeah, El Paso, I guess. You knew Gomez, Felix Gomez.
Oh yes, the father was worked for Squires Lumber.
Yeah, and his brother
His
worked
lumber
for
company,
I
and
think-
all the brothers were baseball.
right.
And
Willie
then,
Gomez, yeah,
Yeah, Robert Bobby
Yeah,
Carrasco
I know
married
Bobby.
into that family.
right. The Gomez, yeah.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of baseball in that family, you know. Yeah, I know Bobby very well. Yeah, him and Pete and Danny, great people.
Well, your other project seems to be something that we should get together again,
Okay,
like we did today,
for the Mercury's
and talk about your research
Yeah,
and what you came up with,
yeah,
and some of the things that, some of the stories that you will be able to tell us
right,
about the players, and also some of the team activities.
right.
So
Right.
looking forward to that, Mel.
Okay,
And Mel,
me too.
your contribution is a tremendous legacy to the city of Colton, and I think it's long been overdue. And I congratulate you
Right.
for doing this thing. This
'Cause I'm
not
thinking-
only for the city
right.
but also for our community,
Right.
our Mexican American community. So thank you very much, Mel. And
You're
could we
welcome.
give you a round of applause? Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
You're welcome. I still have strong feelings of. I don't know if there's any other ball teams that I'm going to be able to, because I think this will be my last one. I know the guy at the museum, Mike Murphy's been wanting me to go to help because they don't have a lot of help there. So I could do that in the future, just greet people there or something. And then, what's the new councilwoman's name?
Zamora's daughter.
Jordan, what's it?
Hi, what's her name?
Is she my
With the
councilman?
J?
Yeah, that's it.
Zamora Jorin.
Maureen?
Yeah.
Yeah, she saw me at Staters that she wants me to be in
Summer.
Summer.
yeah. She saw me here at Staters and wanted me to join a commission of some sort of history or something. But I couldn't give her an answer because right now I'm going through a lot and
No.
I don't want to commit myself to. And if I can give it my full, then I don't really even get started.
Well, with these two interviews that we've had, the women's baseball, and now these old timer baseball,
Yeah,
you have given it all
I think so.
all the ganas that you placed in these
Yeah.
in these
Yeah,
projects.
if I was started when I was younger, you know, but
Mel, that's what I say.
yeah,
Yeah, that's what I said. I should
know.
have started this project when I was younger. But it's never too late.
No, no.
Well, thank you so much, Mel.
Thank you, thank you. God bless.
A quick question. What was the name of your barber shop and how did it get that name?
Oh, Los Hermanos, not hermanos. Like a lot of people, oh, ¿cómo que? Oh, hermanos. Back in '78, my brother came in with me, Al Salazar, and he came in as a partner, and he said, "Well, we want to change the name because at that point it was Mel's Barbershop. Because after Charlie's Barbershop, it was Mel's, and then with him coming in, he's the one that picked that name, Los Hermanos." Because of the hair, it's a barbershop, you know. If it would have been a hamburger stand, no way you can use hair, you know. So it fit in, and it's an unusual name, and it's catchy when people see. Oh, it's not. Hermanos, hairy hands, you know. But it fit, and even after he left, because he was only there, I'm going to say from '78 to '85, because he went into corrections after that. But I kept the same name. So that's how that name.
Well, thank you for answering that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that, but it was I don't know. I've been blessed with a lot of years, hopefully a lot more. And now that I got into the church, you know, that's why I say I'm young. It makes me young because I don't know a lot. I'm not the type of guy say, hey, John 8:12. I'm not that type of a yet. And I may never get there, but I love reading the Bible. I love reading the scriptures, and that's what's keeping me going. That's what's keeping me fed. And now I got like our pastor said last Sunday. In fact, I didn't go this Sunday. I felt kind of sick today, so he says you can't just be reading and taking it all in. You got to release. You got to empty it out. And he means by that, what you learn, you disciple.
Well, you did a good job today. Thank you.
I'm glad
Thank
I
you.
fit that in with you guys because I always, if the door's open, I'm gonna go in there. I'm gonna disciple.